Today we commemorate Black Wednesday as it marks exactly 43 years since the apartheid government silenced independent voices by closing publications that were vocal about the inhumane regime. On Wednesday, the 19th of October 1977, the World, the Weekend World, as well as other anti-government newspapers and 19 black consciousness organizations were shut down and banned in a bid to stop the freedom of expression. Now, the security police arrested the editor of the World publication, along with other black consciousness activists. Dr. Thami Mazwai, anti-apartheid activist and veteran journalist, joins us to talk more about Black Wednesday. Dr. Mazwai, pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and welcome to your listeners.
So give us an insight into what it was like then, when a lot of papers had to be closed, journalists' lives were threatened. Take us back to those times.
Well, when I was in Soweto doing my rounds, and at a specific time I had to phone my story in on what the situation is. And my editor at the time was Joe Latakomo. And as I phoned into the story of the arrests, because I went from the various homes of the leaders, Matabate, Mutlana, Nkondo, Mazibuko, and so on, and find out they'd been taken in by the police. So I was now going to phone my story in, and Joe just said, "Oh, you must just come back. We no longer have a newspaper."
Wow.
And there was a sense of shock. And then I got into the company car, and we drove back to the office, only to find that the people were milling around at the offices. And then later on in the afternoon, the security police came and virtually took Percy away.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, what happened then? You know, I mean, when you silence something like these publications and the stories are happening, and yet journalists, and there must have been many of you working on this, could not go out and report on these stories. What was the next step for you? Did you find that a lot of journalists had to work underground? I imagine lives were threatened. It was an exceptionally dangerous time for journalists. What happened after that?
Well, I mean, obviously there was no opportunity to work underground, because where would you find the printing presses? Where would you find the distribution mechanisms and so on? But what happened that there was a staff meeting in which, the management told us, well, that they will see what to do. And a few days later, Post appeared on the scene. Now, there was a newspaper, Natal Post. So what they did, they extended that title into a Transvaal Post. And of course, we continued, and needless to add, Transvaal Post was also banned, and then the Sowetan appeared, which was a freebie that was started to compete with Soweto News, which was produced by South African Associated Newspapers, and we were part of the Argus group. So there was that competition. So then the Sowetan was launched. After the Post. What I will say about the Argus, about the English language newspapers, the two groups, that they were determined, to really stay alive and also continue on the job that we were doing. That can be said about them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's for a moment talk about the Rand Daily Mail, because that was also another publication, I think it was in 1985, that was also shut down, moving, it was in publication since 1902. That was another newspaper that was forced to shut.
Well, it was more of very big business reasons, and also politics in the white community, because there was a certain feeling that the Rand Daily Mail was really going too far to the left than was normal, and they were expected to toe the then progressive party line, of a reasonable opposition to the National Party. Now, successful editors of the Rand Daily Mail, whether it was Benjamin Progrand, Alistair Sparks, took really very aggressive stances towards apartheid. And that affected the advertising because the advertisers were not necessarily liberal people. They worshipped prophets. I mean, and if at all their readers were not, and if at all their buyers were white and so on, then obviously they would have said, look, are you not going to fund? Then they would stop advertising. And there was also those pressures on the Rand Daily Mail. So it was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And so on, necessarily only political.
Dr. Mazwai, I want to come forward into where we are right now. And it's a very different landscape. I mean, what really got me was you saying there could not be anything as an underground movement because that just, there was no printing press, there was none of that happening. But, now the day and age we live in is very, very different. With social media, people out there, they are talking. Nothing stops people from sharing their views, which in itself it's a good thing. It is a good thing to have a voice. We need to obviously look at it with our eyes, both of them wide open, because there is fake news that can also do the rounds. But what are your views in the role of the media and what it's playing and the gap that it's filling today?
I think the main question that has got to be answered is that when we talk of press freedom, whose freedom are we talking about? The freedom for the press or the freedom for society? And press freedom for society means that society is entitled to news that is unbiased, that is true, and that does not further any particular cause that is detrimental to society. Obviously, that has got to be said within bounds. And I don't believe that it means that the media has got to just willy-nilly publish anything without associating itself with the reality on the ground, the aspirations of the people that it should serve. And that has been the debate over the years. Whose freedom is it? That of the media or that of the or the people to get news that is reliable, truthful, and without any bias? So that debate is going to continue into eternity, I mean, undoubtedly. So on. And I believe right now we do have a type of situation in which the government has not has guaranteed the press freedom. And my question has always been, to what extent, like we did in the 70s and 80s as journalists, we really associated ourselves with the right of the people to hear what they expected to hear and to be told all the stories, whether it's from the right wing or from the left wing, that is the National Party or the African National Congress or the Liberation Movement, to put it much more broadly. And I just have this feeling that the media today has not really identified itself with the people on the ground. It has not. It still sees itself as anti-government. And that really is not the role of the media, to be pro or anti-government. It is pro-people. It has got to give people news as news, I mean, what the people are entitled to. For instance, you have poverty. 40 million South Africans are living on less than 1,200 rand per month. 40 million South Africans are living below that, 1,200 rand per person per month. And unemployment is at a staggering 31%. These are figures before COVID. Now they are obviously higher, but we don't have official figures as yet, except that 2.2 million people lost their jobs during COVID. And then you have the Gini coefficient. Now, all these figures worsened after 1994. And you don't hear an outcry from the media on the worsening of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, and make that a campaign which would then put pressure on society too, because PU and I can only be addressed by society and not government alone. What government did was to provide the grants that really put a meal on the table for quite a whole lot of families, to thousands, millions of families. They at least had something to eat because of the grants. But that is very short term, because when the economy goes down, as is the case right now, those grants get threatened because the revenues go down, and various issues, and even the people who lend money, they don't lend you money to make grants because of grants and so on, you see. So now, to what extent is the media associating itself with those dynamics on the ground? It's to me, it's a big question mark. And then, of course, the second thing is that during our time, I mean, whilst we had our own political views, but they seldom found themselves into the pages of a newspaper. So the various splits between the liberation movement and between the white society did not really split the media into those camps. But today, you find that, the various, splits perhaps even within the ANC are reflected in parts of the media.
Yeah, which is something we need to be very vigilant of.
Yes, it's something. Yeah. So the point that one wants to make is that if at all we as society are to treasure press freedom, shouldn't we look at a model that was used by the Swedes? I don't know whether it's still there. I doubt whether it's still there. I think they changed it because of various reasons. In which, the media was entitled to a specific to a subsidy from a government because it had to pay for its bills, but it had to be on the strict and narrow, and not take sides, and not really, it must just give news as they are to the people. Now, obviously, when this was raised in 1994, 1995 at a workshop in the Western Cape, hosted by the then workshop on the media, ANC workshop on the media, led by Joel Nechitenze, there was an outcry that we should allow the government to fund the media. Now, if at all there's an outcry, you don't want to be a lackey of the government.
Yeah.
To what extent are you making sure that you are not a lackey of capital, which is basically paying for your existence? So those are the contradictions that one finds today. But obviously, the question is what can be done about them, and whether the media can be a Chapter 9 institution and be protected and so on. I don't know. But also, it must then be bound by a certain behaviors and so on, and there must be a council that ensures that the straight and narrow. That is something that is still to be that must be debated. But what I'm sure is that society needs a free and independent media.
All right, Dr. Mazwai, we need to leave it there. Thanks so much for talking to us. Dr. Thami Mazwai, anti-apartheid activist, veteran journalist, talking to us about Black Wednesday, which is commemorated today in South Africa. I know there's so much more to talk about, but nonetheless, good to listen to the doctor sharing his views with us on this day. Let's get your news headlines to you now.